Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast by Locksmiths for Locksmiths. This is Season 1, Episode 2, and today's topic is Locksport. Today we will be discussing Locksport and its effect on the lock industry, how Locksport inspires locksmith recruitment, and how locksporters turn locksmiths feel about it all. I'm Tyler J. Thomas, and joining me today, the lovely Jeff Moss and handsome Tim Coleman. This is the Three Tumblers. We're all unique in that we got started in Locksport and then ultimately became locksmiths. I started in 2005 or 6 when the only thing available was quote-unquote MIT lockpicking manual and then some other stuff like the Anarchist Cookbook. But things have changed quite a bit from then until now. You've got YouTube, which I guess technically came out in what, 03, 05, something like that. You've got you've got books on the subject now, actual published books, hard books. You've got Twitter, you've got communities, forums, Discords, subreddits. It's exploded. Jeff, when did you get started?
2008 or so in college, probably in the middle of my college career.
What drew you to it?
I don't know. I can't pinpoint it. I mean, besides the fact that I worked at a hardware store, learned how to cut keys and basic rekeying, worked on my college campus, so I, knew a tiny bit about master keying. But somehow I discovered lockpicking videos on YouTube, ordered some stuff for a basic cheap set of picks, bought a couple shitty padlocks at Walmart, and pretty quickly discovered that I was better at taking them apart and fixing them than picking them, which is still true. Really got into collecting more than the actual Locksport picking part of it. Teaching people how things work, not as much because I've never been a very good picker, but I can make keys for a lot of things.
I've never been good either. Still not good. Tim, when did you get started?
I got started when I was 12. We had the internet for, a year or two. At that point, I discovered, like you said, the MIT lockpicking guide online. And it was just a giant text file. And I read it, decided to make my own tools. I had my dad actually help me because he had some experience with locks, having worked as maintenance for the college he went to. That didn't work out. And then I kind of forgot about it. I don't know, 12 years. And then I was listening to a book series, and the main protagonist could, quote unquote, pick any lock that there was. I said, hey, that might be a skill that I need as a cop. And so I went online looking to buy a lockpick kit, found one. It was $40. I'm not going to spend that much money on something unless if I know that it is good. And so I searched for reviews of it. That's how I found YouTube videos with a review of that set. And then I clicked on the channel because I didn't know if the guy was just doing a review of that one particular thing or not. And turns out the entire channel was about lockpicking.
You bring up a good point, and I don't want to sound like an old head here. I guess I kind of am. But back in the day, really all we had were those text files. And that MIT guide, it said, an excellent source material for tension wrenches were to go out and look for street bristles on the street from the street sweepers. And I thought, oh, okay, well, let me just go walk down the street. Now, that doesn't happen in suburban Atlanta. You got to be deep in a city or something like that. But I mean, there was really nothing to learn beyond just a few text files in some communities, Usenet groups, stuff like that. But we didn't have videos. We didn't have books. I mean, there were books, but they were like Jolly Roger books from the same sites that teach you how to make homemade alcohol and grow clandestine marijuana, stuff like that. And that was also the only sites you could get picks back in the day. The same people that were selling tasers and batons and brass knuckles and butterfly knives were the ones that were selling the Southern kits and stuff like that. And that was really the only thing you had back then. Southern Ordnance or whatever they're called. And occasionally you could find an HPC one on there. They had some of the Peterson, what was the tubular TK1, the tubular pick, that gnarly looking thing, that on there. But they didn't have all these new companies and homemade stuff. And so it was a crazy time. In a roundabout way, what I'm saying is, folks, now you got it good, because we had to learn the hard way back then. And I guess that's kind of my point, or my thought on the subject, is that when I got started was kind of in the beginning of it, in the formidable days, and it was very user-friendly, community-oriented, where we all shared ideas and topics. I mean, for a while there was the NDE magazine, which was well, I won't say I'm included, I wrote some for it, but it was people just getting together, putting together a magazine, discussing things they found. There were tons of white papers. But nowadays, if you go on YouTube, there's some good ones, but almost everything, at least the big ones, just picking locks and showing them. And I have no idea why anybody would watch somebody pick a lock. To each their own. But it's kind of produced these quote unquote lock stars or rock stars, and it's gotten ridiculously silly. And I thought about naming names, and we talked about this earlier this week, but I'm not gonna, because I don't want to get sued. But you know who I'm talking about, and the people that aren't really demonstrating or innovating anything, just going on and showing kind of what Jeff and I have always called parlor tricks. You know, they learn something, some hand, under the door tool, the shrum tool, from Carolina Roller, which, Tim, you need to share that story before we end.
He's like 5 minutes up the street from me, the inventor.
Yeah. And
the manufacturer is 3 minutes up the street from me.
So the person touting it really didn't have much to do with its development, But yeah, it's kind of gotten a cult of personality about it, that it's absurd and it's ridiculous. I mean, we're picking locks for fun, and some of us have made careers and money out of it, but get real. Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, I the people that I know locally and stuff, and we teach people how to do it at some of like the local hacker space type things, and it's more just for knowledge of how things work. They don't understand doors, they don't know fire codes, they don't know any of that kind of stuff. Master keying, it's one part of a very large segment of an industry.
When did it become a freaking personality for some people, an identity? It's absurd.
I agree. Probably when they figured out that they could make money on it and speak about things that other people think they're an expert on.
Yeah, well, they maybe want to seem more important than they really are. But again, if you're not innovating or you're not improving upon something, it's just crazy to me that some people would look upon those as an authority figure, when really all they're doing is just parroting what they've seen or learned before. I mean, you know me, you've seen the technical white papers that I've written.
Yeah.
And shared just with other locksmiths. I would never release some of that shit. And I know some security through obscurity and all that, just to boost my name.
Right. You're not saying
a little community.
Right. You're not saying, oh my God, nobody knew that this keyway existed. Well, actually we all did. It's just not published.
And you're also not advocating for hinge pin removal as a completely easy, covert entry access.
Right. Carrying a cord fleet cop car key with me on a daily basis.
The agency I work for bought like 2 that were fleet keyed, and that was it.
Do I know that would probably work most of the cars in this area? Yes. Do I have any reason to carry one? No.
Yeah, why do people carry those common use keys if not to do something nefarious?
Because
locksmiths I can understand.
Right, I use a C415A key. I mean, the only reason I would carry one of those is somebody comes in and, hey, I need a CH751 key cut by code or whatever. I'm like, well, hey, I can just copy this one. I don't have to look up the code. There's no non-nefarious reason to carry a Ford fleet vehicle key unless you remember the talk about the heavy equipment keys where somebody would oh, I don't sell those. Those aren't for customers for sale. That's if I need to move something that's in my way.
You might want to expand on that, or at least give the backstory, because I don't think anybody knows what we're talking about.
Somebody was saying that they carry a ring of key-to-like construction equipment keys, and if there's a piece of equipment that's in the way of them trying to do their work, they'll just move it because they have the key.
Yeah, that reminds me too. This whole, some people have made a living off of it. This physical security penetration testing shit, which is such horseshit because there's been actual studies on this. UNC Charlotte, I think Western Kentucky. I wrote an article about it years ago in the National Locksmith. By and large, criminals of any class, residential, commercial, high end, they're not using professional tools for burglary.
You know, it's like we keep, to what Jeff was saying, we keep a ring of common Sentry Safe keys in our shop. I'm not going to lie about it. I'm not going to hide it. We keep a ring of them because 9 times out of 10, that will let us in the customer's Sentry Safe.
Or the DTEX keys.
Right.
Yes, DTEX keys. Also,
that's for our convenience. When somebody orders DTEX keys because they lost them at the store, again, I don't have to look it up. I just go in my ring and copy them and have a nice day.
Exactly.
Or what about common construction or core keys? Jeff and I have what is it now? Like a 7 or 8 page list?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. And can you imagine if some of these lock stars got a hold of that and were wanting to sell a set or sell a copy of the PDF to the list? I mean, you can't see it.
What are you talking about? They already sell the keys. People
Oh, do they?
You can find some of those common construction keys online. I mean, on the builder if they don't switch them out. It's not.
Well, I added one construction core bidding to that list. I think, Jeff, I sent it to you. Or if I haven't, I need to as soon as I get back to the shop Monday.
Somebody brought in some Falcon black cores yesterday and kept them on the same control key, but rekeyed them. They don't have a system. It's like 2 doors or something. But
I mean, there's so much shit that we all know and do and use to help, whether it's intellectual or a physical tool, that if we wanted to be jerk off and make a name and money beyond what we do, we could really give lock stars a run for their money, because what they're showing is basic level bullshit.
So you're saying I could go to one of the locksmith conventions and register using an alias and not use my real name, even though most will know who I am?
Yeah, you can go by the Moss Man. I wouldn't be able to figure out who you are from that.
You know, I think that the 3 of us, if we did not use our powers for good, the 3 of us could go out in the world, or at least here in the U.S., and kick ass 1,000 times more than they did in the movie Sneakers, where they had a cast of 8 doing the same thing that we could.
Oh, there's shit. Yeah, the shit that Jeff and I have done with just Medico behind the scenes. I don't want to name it. Jeff, don't name it either, but there wouldn't be a Medico safe.
Yeah, exactly.
But we use that to help us with our jobs. We're not trying to make a name or money or ego stroke from it. But yeah, and it's not just Medico. I mean, there's a lot of stuff we do.
It's just, here's all this information from 27 different places. I'm going to put into one place. I can't do anything with it. And the only thing,
you can do a little bit with it.
Yeah, but I can't order any of this stuff. So only thing that it tells me is if I find a cylinder A and a key B, I might be able to have a key that fits after I take it apart and repin it.
We've reverse engineered some of we could alter certain blanks as is to get them to work.
Right.
I mean, those people who say, oh, you can make a control blank for a Schlage LFIC by just modifying an SC4 blank. Well, duh. Who the hell is going to take the time to do that?
Or who has the knowledge?
Right. But
the tools. Yeah. Because tools are expensive. Machines are expensive.
Right. But it's still, if you need one control blank, it's quicker to do that than to wait 2 days for the blank.
Exactly.
Done a job and it doesn't work the best, but you're able to pop the cores in and out and you move on with the next job. For the shop keys or whatever, you wouldn't necessarily give it to the customer because they probably break it. Back to what I was saying, and I know I feel like we're off, but when I got into this, when I talked to other locksmiths before even getting it, I never told them that I picked lock. I just said I collect them because that basically was true. I need key blanks. I want to make working keys for these locks, whatever. Keying and pinning is only part of what you need to know. So like we were saying earlier, the people that post on Reddit, I've picked locks, so I want to be a locksmith. Well, that's, unless you are doing lockouts all day, which isn't really feasible. I could go 2 or 3 days in the shop without having to pick anything because I'm selling hardware, I'm doing systems, I'm programming car keys, I'm copying hundreds of keys at a time, whatever the picking is only a small part of it, and knowing things like I was saying earlier, I didn't know about handing. I didn't have any idea about fire codes or things like that. Beyond, when you're working at the hardware store, you're selling deadbolts for somebody's house, and that's about it. You don't know anything about panic hardware or hinges or closers or so there's so much more, and I'm not even touching the electronic stuff. Storefront.
I think you just took my whole block away from me.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think you were. Well, I'll circle back and wrap it up with just basically saying, it's a free country. Do what you want, but I just don't understand some of these douchebags.
I'd like a final word, if I could.
For me or you?
No, for me.
Oh, okay.
Just before you wrap it up, I think that there are a lot of locksporters out there who are really great. They're collectors. They're hobbyists, they're pickers. They do it because it's a cool little thing to do sitting in front of the television. I think that some, and it's a very minor percentage, quote unquote, Locksport people out there on the internet are taking advantage of the tiny bit of knowledge that they have and presenting it as some new discovery. Whereas locksmiths have known about this for decades. And I think that anybody listening to this podcast or who watches any of our videos should take those videos with a grain of salt. Just know that popping the pin out of a hinge is not going to work 99.9% of the time. I texted
not in commercial.
No, I texted you guys what was it, Tuesday or Wednesday this past week with the pile of drill bits that I had ruined drilling out screws from hinges. Yeah, because they were rusted. You're not getting in that way. So for consumers out there, please just know that us locksmiths, we know and appreciate locksporters and people who are the hobbyists and do it because it's a puzzle. And we also recognize the people who try to go out there and get fame and fortune and glory under the Locksport name. That's all.
Right. And I know I can hand a very padlock that hasn't been opened in 30 years to, some people I know, give them an hour or two, he'll have the thing open. And we typically don't have the time to do that. We have other ways, we could take it apart to, I think the leashes and stuff like that. I watch videos from a lot of other people in the industry and there's a better way to get into a car and you can make a key at the same time. Go for it. That part isn't important because the keys are sitting on the seat or whatever, and you just need to get in, then there's other ways to do that. The whole, I would say, just the showmanship type part of it didn't used to be like that. The guys that I started working, the original people that I watched and did picking and stuff, it wasn't about what I can do. It's just it's showing and educating other people. I mean, one of the best people that I watched do picking never talked in any of his videos. And to me, that's sort of like, it's not about me. I shouldn't say it's not about the person doing it. It's the skill that they have, but you're focusing on the lock and what they're, and not, them bullshitting and saying how cool they are. I guess letting their skills speak for themselves in a way. Like I have coworker, he may not be able to pick it, but if that thing's locked, he'll impression it open in 10 minutes. Stuff like that.
Exactly. I mean, like I suck at impressioning. I'm not gonna lie, I suck at it. And I have over all these years, even with just like simple desk locks. Picking is definitely a skill, but you shouldn't present it as though you're the first to discover it, or that because you have picked this one lock that is mounted in a vise on your desk that you can sit at in a comfy chair inside your house with no time constraints, you shouldn't present yourself as though you're an expert on locks.
But if I pour a glass of bourbon, doesn't that make it all right?
Well, if you pour a glass of bourbon and then pass it to me,
listen here,
that does make it okay.
What a chuckle fuck. Okay, that'll end that segment. Thank you. On to the next. All right, Jeff, it's your turn. What are your thoughts on Locksport?
I mean, I think on the whole, it's good. It got me more involved with more people that knew what they were doing better than me, better pickers or better at bypassing. And, eventually I learned, might be something that I could do as a career. I got interested in how the cylinders and how different hardware worked, and doing IT, I didn't like where I worked, even though it was sort of in the same industry. Getting to know Tyler and talking to a lot of other people in the industry, took a chance that, the shop that had been around a long time that might be looking for somebody with the skills that I had in the computer world and the mechanical background, and wanting to learn more about hardware and installation and all that stuff. That was 5.5 years ago, so it's worked out pretty well.
Damn, it's been that long?
Yeah. October was 5 years, so
I remember talking to you when you worked at the old place. We're getting old.
Not a journey for everyone. If you're starting right out of school versus going to college, making more money, doing something else like I did, and like the other guy who I work with now who's 25, if you were starting out of college and there was more of a clear path to get into the field, unless you're willing to start at $10 an hour, which people aren't when they're out of high school for 6 or 8 years. If you knew nothing and just graduated high school, you could learn a lot by working in the shop and sweeping the floors and helping customers. And, it takes time to get into, helping people unassisted and knowing part numbers and knowing functions. And like I said, I didn't know about handing or different functions of locks or, classroom functions, storeroom, all that kind of stuff. I just thought, well, I know some, I know about cylinders. I know how to pin things up. And so I didn't have to get taught how to use a key machine or identify key blanks, because I had been doing that kind of stuff working at the hardware store. But there's a lot more that you don't even realize. So I would say that if you are thinking about doing, you don't know as much as you think you know.
It's good to have a foundation, though, going into it, as opposed to knowing nothing at all.
For sure.
I don't think it's like golf where you can necessarily develop a bad habit or tendency and then it has to be retrained. I mean, you can build upon what you already know.
Right. If you know how to use basic hand tools, measuring, looking at prints, following instruction manuals and things like that. I mean, most of it is not rocket science. Some of the electronic stuff, networking and all of that, safes. I mean, cars is a whole different world, but you have a general knowledge, or to gain a general knowledge, being able to get your hands dirty, things like that.
I think I heard it best once with the guy that taught me a lot of what I know with regards to pay and making a living out of it. He said, I'll never be a rich man, but I'll never have to worry about feeding myself.
And I think we're all three of us are fortunate that we are working in established companies. I think it would be a lot harder to start. And I thought at one point, maybe I'll just take some money that I saved and try to start my own locksmithing business. And I'm glad I didn't do that, because 5 years in working at a shop, you realize what you don't know. And if I were to have started on my own, I don't think that would have, because there's so much stuff out there that you've never seen before.
I have the utmost respect for people that start on their own doing this, because I couldn't even fathom doing it. It is so incredibly hard. And they've pulled it off and they're successful. I mean, that's incredible. I can't imagine starting from ground zero.
Exactly. I was considering when I first got my locksmith license, because I didn't know where I was going to go at that point, basically because there was 3 months or 2 months, whatever, between getting my license and starting full-time as a locksmith. I didn't know how things in my life were going to go. I had considered starting my own little side business, going out and doing like little residential stuff. And I am so glad that I didn't, because knowing what I know now and realizing what I didn't know then, it would have been a disaster. And I probably would have quit and hung up my locksmith hat and just said, you know what, the hell with this. Jeff, also, you took away another third of my block. You're good.
So we're going to wrap this up real quick then.
You can edit it and just say everything that he just said was bullshit. Thank you.
Jeff, anything else, Tim?
I would say, to Jeff's point, Locksport, if you are in an established shop and you're trying to recruit new people, look to Locksport, because that would give you a base of some of people who are passionate. Even though a hobbyist locksport might say that the only skill they have is being able to pick locks, well, at least they understand how a lock cylinder works. You can expand upon that. So look at somebody who's passionate for what it is you're doing and willing to learn.
Yeah, I think that's I've heard that described with boxers and MMA fighters is that you can teach the technique. What makes somebody successful is the drive, determination, and the heart to be perfect and be the best at it. I agree. You can only teach them the hand candy. You got to teach them the head candy. That's the big thing. All right, we're gonna take a quick break. We'll come back and wrap things up. Okay, we're going to wrap it up, but we're going to give Tim the final word. It's his time to impart wisdom on the subject. Unfortunately, we've stolen a lot of his talking points because, as the saying goes, great minds think alike. So, Tim, salvage what you can.
All right. So when I started as a locksmith a year and a half ago, a well-established shop, as we've talked about, and having come from a Locksport background, as we've talked about, I thought that I would at least have somewhat of an advantage being able to take apart basic locks, lock sets and cylinders and such. I didn't know anything because when you get out there in the real world, it's not about the actual lock. It's about the door. As I tell customers, we shouldn't be called locksmiths. If you're in the field, you should be called a doorsmith because most of the time the problems are with the door. And when a customer calls and says, hey, I think I need my lock changed on my front door because it's really hard to turn the key on the outside and the thing on the inside, I ask them, please open the door and turn the thumb turn, the inside part. And does that work smoothly? And when they say, yes, it does, I say, okay, the issue is probably not with the lock itself. It's with the door frame. And yes, we can help you. And we go out there and we adjust the strike. We put a longer screw in the hinge or whatever it needs to adjust it, but we make it right. So instead of locksmithing, don't think of locksmithing as being able to pick a lock, take it apart, repin it, master key it, whatever. Think of it as the whole door. If it opens and shuts, takes a key or a code, we work on it. We're locksmiths. Jeff, what do you think about this?
Oh, absolutely. And that's that's a lot of the stuff that I didn't know. And I will certainly admit being able to service the whole opening, very important. Hinges, closers, push plates, kick plates, whatever. If somebody wants to put a kick down doorstop on a fire exit, you should have the knowledge to tell them that you probably can't do that. Double cylinder deadbolts in houses that are rentals and stuff, like, you should be able to advise your customer that that's probably not allowed. You could have the best lock in the world on a hollow wood door, that a stiff breeze could blow it open. Storefronts, we don't do glass, but knowing how this stuff goes together. I never thought about or even knew about floor closers and concealed overhead stuff. You don't think about it. You see a door and it opens until you have to work on them or help work on that on stuff. You don't even think about it. I would say having a background in carpentry would be helpful. We're not installing doors, but we get it fixed all the stuff when somebody else does it wrong or something wears out or breaks or the fire department kicks the door down. Being able to retrofit things. And
let me ask you this, Tyler. When was your moment starting out in your career that you said, okay, I don't know jack shit about what I'm doing?
Day one, that was the first time I ever touched a drill. And then on that day, I also drilled a door contact for an access control system on the wrong side of the frame. I put it on, let's see, is that the rabbit or the soffit? But anywho, it was on the wrong side. Yeah, I had never used a drill before in my life. I had built stuff like IKEA furniture for my mom to get money to buy CDs when I was 14, 15, 16. But I had no technical expertise, hand skills, whatever. But like we said earlier, if you got the drive, you'll learn it real quick. And now I'm pretty damn good at everything. Yeah, I started at ground zero.
That's pretty cool. I mean, it's really cool to be able to work with somebody who has the knowledge and experience to be able to say, yes, we can do this to this door, or no, we can't do that to that door. The other day when I was on a job with my boss and we were doing access control install, I had to go out to the truck to get a part or tool or something that we needed, came back in through the front main door. Is like a little medical office. We're in the lobby. It's a very small lobby. The front door closed behind me without even looking at each other. My boss and I both said at the exact same time, the exact same words, we need to adjust that door closer. And we both busted out laughing. That's something that you develop as a locksmith. It is, and it's not the cylinder, is not the key. It's the entire opening, like Jeff said. Last thoughts, Jeff?
Don't be afraid to read the manual first and, triple check everything and reach out to manufacturers, and tech support is there for a reason.
Tyler?
I think we've come full circle. We've done everything from the beginning of locksmiths or Locksport, how we got into it, what those who want to pursue the career, the trade can expect. Obviously, it's a lot more than just picking locks. I wish it was that easy, but it's far more than that. So,
yeah, but you're pretty cylinder centric in what you do.
Yeah, but I still suck at it. But so take it from three people that started picking locks, but this is what we're doing now.
All right, folks, after the break, Spare Parts, hosted by Tyler. So stay tuned.
All right, here's my favorite part of this podcast, Spare Parts, where each of us have a chance to talk about one topic, not necessarily related to the industry or Locksport in this case. Tim.
All right, so for my spare part, I would like to say that there was a cat in Long Island that belonged to a family. His name was Nally. In 2012, he escaped out the door. And despite his family's efforts, a year-long search for him, including posting posters throughout the neighborhood, they were unable to find him. In 2015, the family moved to Spain along with their three other cats. Just 3 months ago, somebody in Long Island found their cat, Nally, and nursed her back to health and took her to Animal Services, where they scanned for a microchip. The microchip revealed the family's name and information, and Animal Services contacted them in Spain. The family plans on going to Long Island after the first of the year to reunite with Nally. So that is such a great story. I don't know what I would ever do if one of my cats got loose and got lost. That's my spare part.
That's awesome. My dogs always had microchips, so I call them cyborgs, but yeah, what that can do. My spare part, I don't know. I went to AA affiliate, I guess you could call it, of hockey last night. Had a Thrashers night, which was our NHL team in Atlanta up until 2011, and the NHL let them reuse the logo and names and all of that, and it was awesome as shit, man. It was like being a kid again. So I'm on cloud 9 right now. So that's my spare part.
Well, I guess my spare part is that my dad had shoulder surgery, which you guys already know. He does not have any spare parts installed.
A speedy recovery to him.
It was all arthroscopic with hair jobs.
Yeah, well, I hope he gets better. All right, thank you all so much for listening to us today. We enjoy making this show for you as much as you enjoy listening. Just judging by the metrics, we didn't promote this at all last week, but we've already got a few hundred views and downloads between all the podcast apps and YouTube. So we appreciate that, and we'll refine this, and it'll get better and better as we go. I am your executive producer, Tyler J. Thomas. Technical editor is Jeff Moss. Editor and writer, Tim Coleman, handsome Tim Coleman. Public relations specialist is Lotta B.S. Our bolt tightener is Tilda Plyerslips, and our chief legal counsel is Huey Lewis Dewey of Dewey Cheatham and Howe, otherwise known as Huey, Louie, and Dewey. Till next time, guys, thank you.
Keep your stick on the ice.
Stay out of trouble.